Now that we're done doing our rough draft in the back taper, we can move on to the neckline and use our Gold FX to make them as crispy as possible. I always start off at the bottom and work my way to the top arch using the corners of the Gold FX blade. I also make sure I go slow enough that the hair feeds into the trimmer and that it cuts properly. Now that we're done with the back taper and neckline, we can move on to the side taper and create our first guideline. You want to make this guideline at a curved shape so the fade can flow better. Now that we're done balding them out, we can move on to our no guard all the way open and create our second guideline. We're then going to slightly close the lever and erase our initial guideline completely. Now that we're done erasing our initial guideline, we can move on to the one guard all the way open and create our third guideline. Again, we're still following that same curve shape and being consistent as possible. After the one guard all the way open, we're now moving on to the two guard all the way open, creating our fourth guideline. We're still using the corners and making sure it's consistent as possible to that same curve we started with our initial guideline. Now that we're done softening up the line with the two guard and the lever, we can move on to the 1.5 guard and use its corners to erase the line completely. Before we use our clipper over comb method, we're going to debulk with the 3 guard all the way open. Now we're using our clipper over comb to debulk and make it as smooth as possible to blend into the top hair. Here I'm using my shave stick so he doesn't bump up. This is right before we use the foil shaver. Now I'm going to use the Babyliss foil shaver to remove all the stubble. Moving on to the C-cups, we're starting off at the bottom and working our way to the top arch. You also want to make sure not to press too hard with the teeth of the trimmer because you could bite them. Here we're heading over to our previous guards and detailing as much as possible. The one guard all the way open is very critical to detailing and also the half guard. You want to make sure you flick out as much as possible and use the corners as much as possible. Moving on to our Turkish razor and Derby Premium blades, we're going to make them as crispy as possible. But before we do that, we're going to apply shave gel. This is so it makes the skin as smooth as possible when the razor is gliding over it. When using the Turkish razor, you want to make sure you stretch the skin as much as possible and keep the razor at a 45-degree angle. If not, there's a higher chance of you cutting them.